Welcome to the deep dive. Today we're tackling a really intense year for teenagers, 11th grade, usually around 16, 17 years old.
Yeah, it gets called the make or break year a lot, doesn't it? And,
Mhm.
for some pretty solid reasons.
Absolutely. We've been digging into this great document, 16, 17, 11th grade.pdf, and it really shines a light on why it's such a big deal academically, socially, and just figuring out who you are as adulthood looms.
Right. So much is happening all at once.
Exactly. So today, we're going to walk through the key stuff, how they're changing mentally and emotionally, those big life questions that start popping up.
Oh, yeah, the existential stuff.
The kids who look fine but are actually overloaded, relationship dynamics, school pressures, college stress,
How it compares to the year before, 10th grade.
how to support them, those first real steps into adulthood, common stresses, communication breakdowns, that fear of letting parents down,
Which is huge, even if unspoken.
why they still need emotional coaching, warning signs to look for, and maybe some helpful reflections for parents or caregivers.
Basically a shortcut to understanding this really critical, often challenging year.
Okay, so let's jump in. Developmentally, what's happening? Cognitively, their thinking gets, well, pretty sophisticated, right?
Definitely. The source highlights big steps in abstract reasoning. They can think about hypotheticals, bigger systems.
Like politics or social issues.
Exactly. And institutions. They start questioning things more deeply. Plus, there's more self-reflection, more empathy development.
So they're looking inward more and also understanding others better. And the source mentioned long-term planning, like college, careers.
Yeah, that capacity grows significantly. They can start thinking further ahead, plan for the future, finances even. But, and this is important,
Uh-huh.
their executive functions, planning, organization, focus, can still dip, especially when they're stressed or just plain overwhelmed.
Right, so the engine's stronger, but it can still stall under pressure. What about emotionally?
Well, they generally get better at managing emotions, the source suggests. But they're also really susceptible to burnout, panic, or just withdrawing completely. It's a bit of a paradox.
And that internal conflict seems key, the one between their real self and who they think they should be.
Oh, absolutely. That tension is often running underneath everything. And it can lead to really harsh self-judgment. They can be incredibly critical of themselves.
Which probably connects to that next point, the emergence of existential awareness. Suddenly these huge questions hit them.
Right. What's the meaning of all this? What kind of life do I want? And crucially, what if that clashes with what my family expects?
Oof. Yeah, that's a heavy one. How does that usually show up?
It varies.
Mm.
The source mentions things like a sudden interest in philosophy, religion, maybe activism. They're trying to grapple with these big ideas.
Or it could go the other way.
It could. Cynicism, maybe some existential dread, or pulling back emotionally, especially if they feel like those questions aren't welcome or get minimized.
So as a parent, you might want to jump in with answers, but the source says, don't.
Pretty much. Encourage the questions, validate them, but don't feel you need to provide neat answers. Offer ways to reflect books, journaling, just talking openly.
I like that phrase they suggested. Those questions are big and they matter. I've asked them too. It sort of normalizes it.
Exactly. It builds connection, which is vital because there's this whole group of teens the source calls invisible load carriers.
The together teens. Looks like they have it all figured out.
But they're paddling furiously underwater, trying to keep up an image, internalizing massive expectations, terrified of disappointing people.
That's worrying because they might not ask for help until things are really bad. What are the signs?
They can be subtle. Changes in sleep too much or too little. Gradually pulling back from things they used to enjoy, and that constant, I'm fine, even when their eyes or energy say something different.
Oh, okay. The source had a good tip there, didn't it? Asking about energy levels.
Yes. Instead of just, how are you, and try, are you running on full, half, or empty this week? It can sometimes get past that automatic fine response.
That's smart. Okay, let's talk relationships. They get more serious in 11th grade.
Generally, yes. The source points to deeper emotional investment, more thought about the future together. That means more intimacy, but also more risk.
Risk of what? Heartbreak, obviously, but other things.
Yeah, greater vulnerability around key issues like trust, loyalty. The source also flags potential for codependence, more emotional ups and downs, maybe tying self-worth too closely to the relationship.
So if you're a caregiver seeing this, the advice isn't to panic.
Right.
With-
Avoid the moral panic.
Yeah.
Focus instead on emotional safety, good communication, helping them think about boundaries.
What kind of boundaries?
Things like consent, and the source specifically mentions emotional consent too, which is interesting. Digital respect, how they treat each other online, and the difference between closeness and control.
That question they suggested seems useful. A healthy relationship makes room for both people to grow. What does that look like to you?
It really prompts them to think critically about it. Now, the source does touch on some observed gender trends in how teens handle stress, but with a big caveat.
Yes, very important. These are general trends, not rules for every single person. Individuality is key.
Absolutely crucial. But broadly speaking, the source notes girls might tend towards hyper-responsibility, anxious perfectionism.
While boys might lean more towards disengagement, avoidance, or maybe using humor to deflect.
That's the tendency observed. Academically, maybe girls pushing hard, risking burnout, while boys might need more external nudges. Emotionally, girls perhaps seeking peer support more readily.
And boys may be isolating more or externalizing their stress somehow.
Again, general patterns. Socially, girls navigating really complex emotional stuff in friendships. Boys may be feeling pressure to seem confident even when they're not.
But the main point is...
The main point is, how is the individual teen coping? That's what matters, not fitting them into a box based on these trends. Look at the specific kid.
Got it. Okay, school, academics. 11th grade sounds like the Mount Everest of high school coursework.
It often is.
Yeah.
The source breaks it down. English language arts get serious complex arguments, literary critiques, understanding rhetoric, tackling college-level reading.
And math is usually algebra the second, pre-calc, stats, laying groundwork for STEM.
Yep. Science means chemistry, physics, AP Bio, more intense labs, research analysis.
Social studies, U.S. history, government, economics, looking at power structures.
Right, and then you pile on the electives, and often a heavy load of AP courses. Students feel the pressure to stack their transcripts for college.
So GPA, standardized test prep like the SAT or ACT, college readiness, it all just slams together this year.
It really converges, which leads right into college planning itself. The source calls it an identity mirror.
How so?
Because those conversations about college aren't just about applications. They bring up family dynamics, money fears, unspoken ideas about success.
Right, what it means to be successful in that family or community.
Exactly. And the teen might feel trapped. Maybe they don't want to go, or they fear they won't get into the right school. Plus, the constant comparing themselves to peers.
That comparison trap is brutal. So the advice is...
Reassure them, college is one path, not the only one. Create space to explore alternatives. Trade school, gap year, starting something entrepreneurial. Focus on fit and well-being, not just prestige.
It definitely sounds like a big leap from 10th grade. How does the source contrast the two?
It lays it out clearly. Identity shifts from exploration towards consolidation. Academic load goes from rising to peak pressure.
Long-term thinking becomes expected, not just starting.
Right. Relationships move from more experimental to deeper investment, and independence goes from just wanting it to actually practicing it with real consequences.
So with all that going on, how do parents or caregivers support them effectively without, taking over?
The key shift, according to the source, is in the role. Less dictator, more accountability partner. Less judge, more curious observer. Less crisis manager, more trusted consultant.
I like that reframing. What about practical tools?
The source suggests things like weekly prep huddles. Just a quick check-in. What's on your plate this week? How can I help you think it through? Not, let me do it for you.
Okay. Offering support, not solutions unless asked.
Exactly. And future-focused coaching. What do you want more of in your life next year? Connecting current actions to their own goals and praising resilience. I saw how hard you worked through that, regardless of the result.
Focusing on effort, not just the grade or outcome.
Yeah, it requires more faith in their capacity this year, less direct intervention.
Which links to that idea of rehearsing adulthood. They're looking for chances to be independent.
They really are. Driving, managing money, expressing opinions, trying out internships, jobs, leadership roles. These aren't just tasks. They're tests of their emerging adult identity.
So support looks like...
Letting them try, yes.
Yeah.
Giving responsibility and letting them experience the outcomes, good or bad, within safe limits. Inviting collaboration. What's your plan for managing your time this month? Praising initiative.
Okay, navigating the pressure cooker. What are the main stressors?
The usual suspects, really.
Yeah.
Standardized tests, GPA, class rank, college applications, keeping up with extracurriculars, relationship drama, plus those big identity questions swirling around.
And how to help them manage.
De-escalate the pressure where you can. Remind them, college isn't a prize for surviving high school. It's just one path. Offer space for emotional release. Ask, do you want to vent, reflect, or make a plan?
Giving them options for how to process.
Right. And reinforcing. Struggle means you're growing, not failing. Normalizing the difficulty.
What about when they just shut down, go silent? That can be tough.
It really can. The source has some great phrases for that. Things like, you don't have to talk right now, but I'm not going anywhere.
Okay, presence without pressure.
Or, I won't fix it unless you want help, but I'll always sit with you in it. Just offering support. And maybe, what do you need, not what do you think you should do?
Trying to get to the core need, that's helpful. Underneath some of this withdrawal is that fear of disappointing parents.
Often, yes. The source really highlights this. It's frequently unspoken, but a powerful fear letting parents down, not meeting expectations, being a burden financially or emotionally.
And that can lead to, what, hiding things?
Suppressing their own dreams if they think parents won't approve, masking vulnerability, over-functioning to prove they're okay.
So what's the antidote?
Direct reassurance. Actually saying the words, there is nothing you could do to make me love or respect you less. It sounds simple, but it can be incredibly powerful.
Even with all this growing up, they still need help with emotions.
Absolutely. The source is clear on this. Despite seeming more mature, emotional regulation is still a work in progress, especially under pressure or online. They still benefit from coaching.
What kind of coaching cues?
Reminders like, you don't need to act on every feeling, but every feeling is a clue. Helping them pause and understand the emotion. And you don't have to manage it alone. I can help you find the right tool, empowering them to seek help.
Okay. And finally, red flags. What are the serious warning signs we need to watch for?
The source lists several. Significant withdrawal from school, friends, activities could signal depression, burnout.
An unhealthy obsession with achievement.
Could be intense anxiety, perfectionism, deep fear of failure, giving up on future plans suddenly. That might point to low self-worth, maybe even trauma or shame.
Escalating risky behaviors.
Often a way of self-soothing or trying to feel some control when everything feels out of control. And critically, any talk like, I don't see the point anymore.
That needs immediate attention, potential suicidal ideation.
Absolutely. Do not ignore that. Mental health struggles often spike in 11th grade simply because the emotional load is so immense.
It's a lot. The source ends with some really thoughtful reflection prompts for caregivers, doesn't it?
Yeah, they're really good. Questions like, am I helping them chase their authentic success or just external validation? How do I show love when they're not excelling?
Ooh, that's a tough one.
What pressures am I carrying that I might be passing down unconsciously? Can I respect their pace even if it feels too slow or off track to me?
How am I affirming who they are, not just what they do?
Have I created space for them to ask hard questions without fearing judgment? Which of my expectations are helpful support and which ones are just silent pressure?
And that last one is powerful. What would I want from my own parent if I were 17 again, facing all this?
Right. It really shifts the perspectives.
So wrapping this up, 11th grade is, well, it's a marathon. They're starting to navigate more independently, holding their own compass.
But they definitely still need help reading the map and maybe just someone to walk alongside them, offering encouragement. They can feel incredibly alone.
It's a real test of trust, as the source says. They're rehearsing adulthood, making choices, feeling big feelings. Our role change is less directing, more supporting their journey to define what right means for them.
Yeah. Which leaves us with a final thought, maybe for everyone listening. Given everything we've talked about, all the pressures, the growth, the challenges of 11th grade, what's one small shift, maybe in perspective or an action, that you think could offer the most significant support to a teen going through this?
Something to definitely think about.